Over the past 2 decades, the NBA has created an offseason that is just as entertaining as a regular season. We've seen LeBron James go to the Miami Heat.
I'm going to take my talents to South Beach and join the Miami Heat.
Kevin Durant go to the Golden State Warriors.
Months ago, Kevin Durant heading to the Golden State Warriors.
Any given year, we can see the whole landscape of the NBA change due to one free agency. But what year had the best free agency in NBA history? In 1976, the NBA had its first official free agency, which would change the NBA forever. But it didn't become what it is today until 2010. And that's where we're going to start this video, ranking every NBA free agency after 2010. The rankings will be based on free agency, draft classes, trades, and unnecessary NBA drama. For clarity for this video, we will only rank what happened during the free agency and not the repercussions of these moves. And to be fair to the recent years, we will only go through the top 10 picks of each draft class. So let's get right into the rankings. First, let's start off with the free agency that really started everything, the 2010 free agency. This was a free agency stacked with stars that were all due for new contracts. We saw LeBron James, Paul Pierce, Chris Bosh, Dwayne Wade, Yao Ming, and Amari Stoudemire all due for contracts this season. Most assumed that the majority of these stars would just sign with their previous team, which most of them did. We saw Dirk, Dwayne Wade, Yao Ming, and Paul Pierce all re-signed to their previous team. But what made this free agency so great was not the fact that all these stars re-signed. It was not even the fact that Amari Stoudemire went to the Knicks. It was not the fact that Phil Jackson announced he would be coaching the Los Angeles Lakers. It was not the fact that Carmelo Anthony decided to stay in Denver. It wasn't even the fact that John Wall went #1 with DeMarcus Cousins, Gordon Hayward, and Paul George. It was because of LeBron James. The whole free agency predicated on where LeBron James would end up. There were 6 teams in legit contention to land this young star. The New York Knicks, the New Jersey Nets, the Chicago Bulls, the Miami Heat, the Los Angeles Clippers, and the Cleveland Cavaliers. All these teams spent years dumping salary cap to just have a chance to land LeBron this offseason. And unlike any other free agency we will cover in this entire video, LeBron's decision was televised. In an hour-long ESPN special titled The Decision, LeBron James would sit in front of millions of fans and say he was going to join the Miami Heat alongside Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade. In a matter of 30 seconds, LeBron James went from one of the most loved NBA players to one of the most hated. And for me, this is a top 3 free agency because of the fact that this started the player empowerment movement and the fact that LeBron James did this in front of everybody on ESPN. Top 3. The 2011 free agency stands along as the weirdest free agency in the entire video. To start off, this offseason started off hot with Kyrie Irving being drafted #1 alongside Kemba Walker, Tristan Thompson, and Kawhi Leonard. The free agency was nowhere as deep as last year's free agency, which featured a lot of the young stars. This year was more so highlighted by the moves of Marc Gasol and Ray Allen. And we saw a lot of players just re-signing with their teams or not even worrying about this year as contract years because there was a bigger issue in the entire NBA this season, the lockout. The NBA was expected to lose $300 million the next season after losing $300 million the previous season. The players and owners could not come to an agreement as the players wanted more of an MLB structure which would allow players to have guaranteed contracts and still make their money even if they underperformed. And the owners, well, they wanted more of an NFL structure, more profit sharing and ability to drop a player if he is underperforming. Both sides were not able to come to an agreement before the season would start, resulting in this free agency being the weakest on the entire list. The 2012 free agency literally had nothing to live up to as the 2011 free agency was so bad, there was no way this one could be worse. The draft class alone already made this year more interesting than the previous as we saw Anthony Davis, Deion Waiters, Andre Drummond, Austin Rivers, Bradley Beal, and Damian Lillard all get drafted in the top 10. But the league would be completely shocked in free agency with the Los Angeles Lakers in an effort to make a winning team around Kobe Bryant would trade for Dwight Howard and sign Steve Nash, giving Kobe an elite playmaker and at the time one of the best centers in the entire league. Many people felt like this move was a Shaq and Kobe-like move with now a point guard that can facilitate and give these guys the ball in the right spots. Other key signings in this offseason would be Goran Dragic going to the Suns, Kevin Garnett and Tim Duncan both resigning, and probably the biggest move other than the Lakers, Ray Allen joining the Miami Heat, which would create a decade-long beef between him and his former Celtics teammates. Overall, this was a good free agency, and I would put it in the middle of the pack. The 2013 free agency would start off on a bad note with a very lackluster draft class. we would see the worst number 1 pick ever get drafted in Anthony Bennett, alongside Cody Zeller, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, CJ McCollum, Ben McLemore, and Victor Oladipo, all going in the top 10. There wasn't a lot of moves in this free agency, but there were some decisions that happened that would have later implications on two teams' success. We saw the Boston Celtics grabbing Brad Stevens out of college to announce him as their head coach, Golden State Warriors selecting Steph Curry over Monte Ellis, as Curry at the time was very injury prone. But this free agency was all about the drama happening in LA. First off, with the Lakers, Kobe and Dwight had a bad season together and never could see eye to eye, and we saw Dwight leaving Kobe Bryant after being frustrated because the chemistry just was not there. On the other side of LA, we saw the Los Angeles Clippers get their best chance contending as they would bring in Chris Paul on a trade after him being denied to go to the Lakers years before. Just off this free agency alone and the very weak draft class it was, this has to be one of the lower free agencies. The 2014 free agency could be described as a Kansas free agency, as the top 2 picks both were from one school, Andrew Wiggins and Joel Embiid, and both of them had a huge impact on the free agency itself. Joel Embiid would have some drama around him and his injury, which would result in him falling lower in the draft, and Andrew Wiggins would be drafted number 1 and traded to the Cleveland Cavaliers for Kevin Love. Other notable players in this draft was Marcus Smart, Aaron Gordon, and Julius Randle. Back to the Wiggins and Love trade, Love would be traded to the Cleveland Cavaliers to form a new Big Three because LeBron James, the story of this free agency, would be returning to Cleveland. Only after 4 years in Miami, he would decide to return home and join the Cleveland Cavaliers alongside Kyrie Irving. With this free agency having one of the best classes we've seen so far, and the fact that it's another LeBron James free agency, making it our second, it has to be in the top 5. The 2015 free agency was another free agency highlighted by one college. This time it was Kentucky. This Kentucky team was infamous for having 5-star freshmen on their team with Karl-Anthony Towns, Trey Lyles, Willie Cauley-Stein, Devin Booker, and a couple others. This team would go undefeated in college, and people legitimately thought that they could beat an NBA team. Alongside the Kentucky squad, there are also some other notable players that would be drafted in Justice Winslow, D'Angelo Russell, Stanley Johnson, and Kristaps Porzingis. Alongside the strong draft class, we saw some interesting signings as LaMarcus Aldridge would join the San Antonio Spurs to team up with Team Duncan and form a modern-day Twin Towers. Goran Dragic was signed to the Miami Heat. Paul Pierce was signed to the Los Angeles Clippers. Tyson Chandler would go to the Phoenix Suns, and Namarin Shumpert would go to the Cleveland Cavaliers. But this free agency has to be one of the oddest because of this story surrounding DeAndre Jordan. DeAndre Jordan was the center for the Los Angeles Clippers and would have a verbal commitment to join the Dallas Mavericks when free agency would begin. The night free agency was set to begin and he would sign his deal, Los Angeles Clippers guard and other teammates Chris Paul would lock him in a house where they would talk to him about re-signing with the team. When the clock hit midnight, they had convinced him enough and he had signed to the Los Angeles Clippers. Seemed like a way that he was not going to go anywhere unless he signed. The 2016 NBA season was one of the best seasons in the entire decade. We saw Kobe Bryant retire, we saw the Warriors win 73 games, and we saw LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers come back from 3-1. But no one would have predicted that the offseason would be just as good as the regular season this year. So there's a lot that happened, so let's start off with the smaller moves first. Dwight Howard would sign to the Atlanta Hawks, Al Horford would go to the Boston Celtics, Steph Curry and Harrison Barnes would both join the Dallas Mavericks. Alright, now to the good part, the drama. First off, we had one of the most hyped prospects we've seen so far in Ben Simmons being drafted number 1 alongside Jaylen Brown, Jamal Murray, and Brandon Ingram. A very good draft class as a whole, but everyone was waiting for the free agency to start as the big ticket item this year was Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant had just come off losing to the Golden State Warriors in the Western Conference Finals where they had blown a 3-1 lead in their chances of going to the NBA Finals. So the question was, where would this young star land? There were 5 teams in legit contention for Kevin Durant: the San Antonio Spurs, Boston Celtics, Oklahoma City Thunder, Los Angeles Clippers, and Golden State Warriors. And he would decide to shake up the entire basketball world and sign with the team that had previously just beat him in the Golden State Warriors. In a move that has went down, as Stephen A. Smith has said, the weakest move by an NBA superstar ever.
Well, I'm viewing it as the weakest move I've ever seen from a superstar. Plain and simple. That's just how I look at it.
Kevin Durant, much like LeBron, would overnight go from one of the most loved players in the NBA to one of the most hated. And because of this and the fact that we saw Ben Simmons and a great draft class, this easily goes down to one of the top 5 free agencies of all time, to add along to one of the greatest seasons we've ever seen. 2016, what a fucking year. The 2017 free agency had a lot to live up to after 2016's free agency and being how crazy it was. And somehow, it did just that. 93 players decided to change teams this free agency, and there is a lot that we have to go through, so follow along. Paul George, who was upset in Indiana, would get traded to the Thunder to join Russell Westbrook and Carmelo Anthony, who had just signed from New York. George, who looked to be a one-year rental for the Thunder as his sole destination seemed to be set on the Los Angeles Lakers, many people questioned this move. D'Angelo Russell would get traded from the Lakers to the Nets as he broke the bro code as he recorded a video without Nick Young's knowledge of him admitting on cheating on his then rapper girlfriend Iggy Azalea. Chris Paul would get traded to the Houston Rockets to pair up with James Harden and create one of the deadliest backcourts in the NBA at that time. Jimmy Butler would join Karl Anthony Towns in Minnesota. Dwayne Wade and Derrick Rose both just signed to Cleveland to help replace Kyrie Irving, who shocked the entire world after requesting a trade from the Cleveland Cavaliers to the Boston Celtics. This trade would also result in the Celtics trading away Isaiah Thomas to the Cavaliers only after he had got hurt playing his heart out for that team after his sister would just passed away. We also saw Gordon Hayward join the Boston Celtics to pair up with Kyrie and join his old college coach in Brad Stevens. Yeah. That was a lot. Not to mention the draft class this year. We saw Lonzo Ball, Markelle Fultz, Jason Tatum, and De'Aaron Fox all go top 5. So as crazy as the 2016 free agency is, 2017 literally topped it with 93 players moving and completely changed the landscape of the NBA. This one has to go right above it and is in our top 5. The 2018 free agency was expected to be another free agency centered around LeBron James, as it was basically inevitable that LeBron would be leaving the Cleveland Cavaliers after he had one of the best postseason performances of his whole career and would get swept by the Golden State Warriors in the finals. Many also thought that OKC forward Paul George would leave the Thunder and go to the Los Angeles Lakers, as this was his goal when he first left the Pacers. But as soon as free agency would start, Paul George would meet with no teams and would be in a party with Russell Westbrook announcing that he's staying with the Thunder. And while the league waited for LeBron James to make his decision, other players were on the move. Zach LaVine was signed with the Chicago Bulls, JJ Redick was signed with the Philadelphia 76ers, Julius Randle was signed with the New Orleans Pelicans, Derrick Rose was signed with the Minnesota Timberwolves, DeAndre Jordan would finally get his chance of joining the Dallas Mavericks, and in a surprise move, Tony Parker would join the Charlotte Hornets. But another very shocking move would be DeMarcus Cousins, who would join the Golden State Warriors, forming what would be a big 5 in him, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Kevin Durant, and Draymond Green. That team was scary on paper. And the draft class was stacked as DeAndre Ayton would go number 1 alongside Luka Doncic, Trae Young, Colin Sexton, Mo Bamba, and Marvin Bagley for all you Kings fans out there. But like I stated at the very beginning, this was the LeBron James free agency, and while the world waited for him to make his decision, he did it in a manner that was different than ever before. No television special, no big returning home party, just a simple statement that stated that he will be joining the Los Angeles Lakers. This free agency lacked drama, but like I said before, any free agency starting LeBron James is automatically one of the best, but because of the lack of drama, it's right outside our top 5. The 2019 free agency was not supposed to be a drama-filled one, as all the media attention was going to the draft. Everyone was stoked to see how Zion Williamson and Ja Morant would be in the NBA, but alongside them also was RJ Barrett, Darius Garland, and Cam Reddish. But this ended up only being a footnote in this free agency, as this free agency was jam-packed. So like we did before, let's go over the least important ones first. Julius Randle would join the New York Knicks, Andre Iguodala would go to the Memphis Grizzlies, Jimmy Butler would sign to the Miami Heat, Al Horford would go to the Philadelphia 76ers, Malcolm Brogdon would go to the Indiana Pacers, Kemba Walker would sign with the Boston Celtics, and D'Angelo Russell would go to the Golden State Warriors. But the biggest moves of this whole free agency were centered around 2 teams, the Brooklyn Nets and Los Angeles Clippers. For the Clippers, they would shock the entire world, as Kawhi Leonard literally put the entire free agency on a halt and made his decision to sign with the Clippers right after getting Paul George to, out of nowhere, request a trade to the Los Angeles Clippers, forming a new big two with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. And for the Brooklyn Nets, many people speculated that KD might be leaving the Golden State Warriors, but no one knew that him and Kyrie were best friends. And after Kyrie, like Paul George, stated that he would stay with the Celtics long term and that he wanted to be there. Because the NBA now had two new powerhouses and one of the best prospects we've seen since LeBron James and Zion Williamson, this was undoubtedly one of the best free agencies we've had, and it's in my top 3 with no competition. The 2020 free agency had a lot to live up to after the league shaking free agency in 2019. To start off, the draft class was pretty top heavy with Anthony Edwards, LaMelo Ball, and James Wiseman rounding out the top 3. Other than the draft, this free agency was about the top teams getting better. The Milwaukee Bucks would go get Drew Holiday and sign Bobby Portis, and the Los Angeles Lakers would blow up their team and get Dennis Schroeder and Montrezl Harrell. We also would see Russell Westbrook get moved to the Wizards, Gordon Hayward sign with the Charlotte Hornets, and Christian Wood go to the Houston Rockets. But this free agency was more about the Phoenix Suns, and they made a big splash trading for Chris Paul and finally becoming a contender in the West. Despite the Suns' improvement and some of the other contending teams getting better, this is one of the worst free agencies, and it's on the bottom of my list. The 2020 free agency would see some unexpected things happen, and it's kind of predictable as this was a shorter offseason than any of the ones before because of COVID. For starters, we would see Patrick Beverley get traded to the Minnesota Timberwolves, Al Jefferson get traded to the Boston Celtics, and Kyle Lowry get traded to the Miami Heat. In the East, we would see a new powerhouse get built in Chicago with them signing DeMar DeRozan, Lonzo Ball, and Alex Caruso. All players who would have ties to the Los Angeles Lakers. Lonzo Ball being drafted by the Lakers, Alex Caruso being let go by the Lakers, and DeMar DeRozan, who was supposed to sign to the Los Angeles Lakers this year, but because of a trade, it was unable to happen. And that trade would be the Los Angeles Lakers trading Kyle Kuzma, KCP, Montrezl Harrell for Russell Westbrook. Once again, the Lakers decided to completely blow up their team and would bring in Russell Westbrook and a bunch of other new players. Dwight Howard, Carmelo Anthony, Malik Monk, Rajon Rondo, and DeAndre Jordan would all sign, as these were a lot of guys out of their primes minus Malik Monk. And the draft class would hold its own, as Cade Cunningham would go number 1 with Jalen Green, Evan Mobley, and Scottie Barnes all getting drafted in the top 5. Overall, this is one of the weaker free agencies, and it has to be towards the bottom of my list. Finally, the last one, 2022. This free agency didn't really seem to have a lot of drama around it because there was no big name free agents that were due up for a new contract. As for the draft, the season has not started yet, so we don't know how these players will pan out. So we'll just give you the top 3 picks, which were Pablo Banchero, Chet Holmgren, and Jabari Smith. As for free agency, there was not much drama. Jalen Brunson would sign to the New York Knicks, the Boston Celtics would get Malcolm Brogdon, and DeJounte Murray would go to the Atlanta Hawks. And then all hell would break loose. Kevin Durant would request a trade from the Brooklyn Nets a day after Kyrie Irving would resign. We all just kind of waited to see what would happen, and free agency seemed to be on a halt for a week. And then some dominoes would begin to fall. In the words of Brian Windhorst, something in Utah was happening. Sending Gobert to Minnesota to pair up with Karl Anthony Towns, and Donovan Mitchell to the Cavaliers to pair up with Darius Garland. In Phoenix, they had their own thing of drama. DeAndre Ayton, unhappy in Phoenix, would sign to the Indiana Pacers, only to be matched by the Phoenix Suns, forcing him back in a situation where he did not want to be. Now, after those moves happened, the rest of the league kind of just sat on their hands and waited for Kevin Durant to be traded. And as we waited, and nothing happened. He would be starting the season after requesting a trade from the Brooklyn Nets with the Nets alongside Kyrie Irving, making this a free agency of what ifs, and because of that, it is a bottom 3 free agency. Oh, and also Draymond Green sucker punched Jordan Poole for no reason. So now, since I broke down every single free agency since 2010, we can get to the rankings. Starting with number 13, the worst free agency of all has to be 2011, the lockout year. At number 12, we have 2015, which was highlighted by top overall pick Karl Anthony Towns. Right above that, at 11, we have the most recent free agency in 2022. Now for the top 10. At number 10 will be 2020, in which we saw Chris Paul go to the Phoenix Suns. At number 9 would be 2013, where we also would see Chris Paul join the Los Angeles Clippers. Coming in at number 8 would be 2021, where the Lakers would trade for Russell Westbrook. At number 7 would be 2012, where the Lakers acquired Dwight Howard and Steve Nash. At the 6th spot would be 2018, where LeBron James joined the Los Angeles Lakers. Now for the top 5. These are the best of the best free agencies. At number 5, we had 2014, which was highlighted by LeBron James in a very strong draft class. But other than that, nothing else really happened, so it's going to stay at the 5 spot. At number 4, we will go with the 2016 free agency, where we saw Kevin Durant sign to a 73-9 Golden State Warriors. It's literally impossible to leave this one out of your top 5. Now, finally, the top 3 free agencies ever. But before we get into the last 3, make sure to comment below what was your favorite free agency, and make sure you give me a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Now, time for the top 3. At number 3, we're going to go with 2010, which is arguably one of the most iconic free agencies of all time. With the decision, it's really hard not to put this at number 1, but the other 2 are just that good. The second greatest free agency of all time is the 2017, where we saw 93 players move to different teams. This would shake up the entire NBA landscape. We saw Kyrie Irving demand a trade, we saw the Rockets form a new duo, we saw a new big 3 in OKC, and much, much more. Last but not least, the number 1 free agency ever is 2019. The combination of Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving to Brooklyn, with Kawhi Leonard and Paul George to the Clippers. Also to have one of the most talented prospects we've seen in years with Zion Williamson and John Morant. This one was a no-brainer. Honestly, this free agency was absolutely crazy, and it's the reason we have the NBA the way it is today. Overall, NBA free agency is something that every NBA fan looks forward to every year, and rightfully so. And this upcoming free agency, all we can hope is that it lives up to some of these great ones, and maybe we'll have a new list next year.